Hello and welcome to the What is God podcast. I'm Shifra Bloom, your hostess. And on this podcast, I ask people from all walks of life their answer to the question, what and where is God and what does it have to do with me? And today I had Padmavati Wylde as our guest. And Padmavati is one of my closest friends who I met in Austin, Texas. She is now in Canada. And if you are watching the video, you can see that she's in the coziest cabin space with a wood stove in the background. And I'm a little bit jealous because I used to live in Oregon with wood heat and it's very lovely. But I was just thinking, of how to introduce Padmavati because she's one of the most dynamic human beings that I know. And she's a transformational coach. She's a healer. She's an intuitive. She's a podcaster herself. But she truly encompasses so much and does so much that it's hard to put into words. And so she's someone that I know that just from this conversation, you're very likely going to experience some inner transformation just from hearing her speak, but no pressure. I'm going to go ahead and let you experience it for yourself. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shifra. I'm gushing over your podcast voice over here. Shifra, as she mentioned, is one of my best friends. And I noticed this subtle shift in her voice when she went into podcast hostess mode. And I'm loving getting to experience this side of you and sharing this space with you. Thank you.
It's so much fun. So I like to jump right in and go deep, and I know you'll have no issue with that. So how would you answer the question, what and where is God, and what does it have to do with me?
The short answer is God is everything. God is everywhere, and it has everything to do with me. So we can start to unpack that and go into that more. I imagine your other guests, some of them have answered in a similar way. Yeah, so going into that deeper, God is in the romantic partner that you experience betray you. God is in your fiercest ally and advocate that supports everything that you do. God is in the collective turmoil that we've all been experiencing the last 3 years. Everything is God. God is everywhere. And it has everything to do with me. And what I was contemplating before we got onto the show today, Shifra, is that's really the grandest love story that could possibly be playing out. What this has to do with me, what this has to do with you, is that's how loved that we are. I really feel like the beginning of this love story is God wanted to experience separation, wanted to experience the other. God is here lonely, right? Like, let's create something new. And so everything was created from that space, including humanity. And with that birthing is the birthing of free will. So God, Goddess loved us so much to give us free will. So we're given this playground, which the bigger playground is the universe, the multiverse, and then the set or setting for this specific love story in this lifetime is planet Earth. And with all of that, we're just like given the opportunity to have free will and to choose to either be benevolent or malevolent, to do positive with our free will, to do negative with our free will. And that to me is like the greatest gift of love, because God, Goddess could have said, okay, you guys only get to do good, right? Like, I'm a divine energy and you only get to do these good things. And all of it is love. All of it is God. And so really what it has to do with me, what it has to do with you, I feel is we get to experience this incredible love story. And there's so much going on behind it. It's karmic. The karma is not only personal, the karma is collective. So all of these interweavings of energy, it's very complex and it's really moving.
Oh, I'm just letting all of that land for a second. I feel like listening to everything that you just said, I'm hearing so much of Kabbalah cosmology of the, what is God and why are we here and how did we get here and what are we doing here anyway? I'm hearing in your words so much of that narrative, which is cool because that's not necessarily the, lineage that you're speaking from. And yet as I'm listening to you, first of all, I love the setting as this epic love story between us and God and the creator. And then I'm seeing these images of, you said, the creator wanted us to experience separation and wanted us to experience the other and wanted us to have free will. And, you mentioned even, it's the betrayal and it's the support, it's the turmoil and it's the harmony. And so what I would love to ask you to expand and go deeper, what comes up is this question of, but why?
That's a great question. I haven't prepared for that question. Why?
Well, we can take a moment and unpack it a little, and I'll speak into it a little more so that you can decide which way you want to answer. And you may answer with a story or an experience or something, but really what I mean by why, to make it a little more specific, is like, what does it do for us as a soul on a journey? What does it do for us to like, why do I have to experience separation? Why, how is the betrayal and the turmoil supporting my, like, why? What's the point of the ups and downs of it? And, I'm just curious what it, more than necessarily you having to have the ultimate answer, I'm curious what that brings up for you, because I know you have a lot of wisdom in navigating your own ups and downs in life and helping others navigate their ups and downs in life. So what do you see are, there's something deeper beneath the, oh no, this is happening. And do you see any themes or any deeper lessons or reasons that come out in your experience when people are on their evolutionary journey and are navigating feelings of separation or otherness or betrayal or turmoil? Does that land for you, that question?
Yeah. So going back to the why, I think the why is the same answer. It's love. Love is the answer. And so I'd like to bring in a teaching from one of my mentors, Sundari Marcy Locke. And if we personalize this and we go back to Shifra or Padmavati or whoever's listening right now, Marcy Locke says that you are your greatest purpose. Your creative expression is your greatest purpose. You're here to create your own greatest love story. And so ultimately, if we see ourselves as this outpicturing of God or goddess, or we see ourselves created in the image of God, goddess, then we get to see that God, goddess, is a creative being. And so if God, goddess, is existing alone at the beginning of all time and wants to experience something different, it's the same as you right now in this moment, Shifra, or me right now in this moment. What do I want to create next? What is my greatest excitement? What would be fun for me? What would be fun for my expression? And God, goddess, in this theory, said, I want to experience humans. I want to experience nature. I want to experience all of these different things. And so created these external things. And for us as humans, created that experience of we can feel separate sometimes, right? Like this is something that you shared, is sometimes we can feel separate or we can feel cut off from God, goddess, and we can feel alone and we can feel abandoned. And that's really an illusion, right? We know that we're always actually connected. And when we get back to that feeling of feeling connected and feeling one with everything, then we realize it was actually there in those moments where we felt like we were forsaken or we were left alone. So in those moments, I like to remind myself that that's true, that I'm not alone, that I'm not abandoned. And I imagine everyone listening has been through enough life experiences where there's something in your life that was really painful that you can look back on and you can see how it was actually perfectly orchestrated for your growth. So that was another point I wanted to share, is this is about creation. It's about what can all be created, and life always evolves, right? So this is also about evolution. So we evolve through challenges. We evolve through hardships. And if you look at this story as like another theory is that there's been a fall from grace and then there's this return to grace. And we're in this phase of returning to grace, or the parable of the prodigal son from the Bible. And so there's like all of this karma that's been created through this free will that is negative, that gets to be cleaned up. And so the karma, Richard Rudd, the author of The Gene Key, says that karma is not personal, it comes with the vessel. So you, Shifra, chose your lineage with the certain ancestral traumas that you chose to incarnate into in order to clear that. That's why people like you, like me, we are the change makers. We're the curse breakers. We're the ones in the lineage that chose to break all this stuff. And I imagine the listener is too. So the karma that you've experienced, even the relationships, the challenges, I don't believe it's necessarily personal. It's not like you did something bad or wrong in your past life, and so now in this life, you have to come and fix it. It's like you are such a bold, powerful soul that you chose this lineage that had these certain patterns repeating to come in and clear it so that you could activate your greatness, so that you could activate your medicine, so you could activate your healing gifts, so that you could show us how beautiful and powerful and magnetic you are.
Oh, you speak so eloquently, and I have chills as you're speaking. Oh, I'm just breathing that in. It feels really good, that narrative, and feels very empowering to have that perspective. And I was, writing down a few things as you spoke. And so I'll just point out a couple things and then we'll take it from there. And one of the first things that came up as I was listening to you was this idea of, if the creator, God, goddess, as you are saying, wants to create nature and humans and all these things to play with and to experience, so too we get to say, well, what do I, Shifra, want to create? And so there's that idea that we are microcosms of the divine. And so that was one thing. And then the other thing was that you keep saying God, goddess. And so far, I've done a few interviews so far. So far, you're the first person to do that. And so I think it would be really great to elaborate on why you're choosing to say God, goddess, and not just God or universe or source or goddess. What does that mean to you, so that we can relate more to that?
Yeah, I think ultimately the energy of God is androgynous, and then to exist on this plane incarnates in the form of polarity, masculine and feminine energies. So, you mentioned lineage at the beginning. I don't really resonate with any particular lineage, and I think that comes from my strong belief in past lives, that I've been in multiple different lineages. And so the one that I feel the most connected with in a way is Hinduism, except I put my own spin on it. So like there's things that resonate, like anything, once it becomes dogmatic, it stops resonating with me. So I pull pieces from all of these different belief systems, like Gnostic Christianity, like Hinduism, Buddhism, and I compile them into something that works for me. And so I believe in gods, I believe in goddesses, I believe in this archetypal realm where there's Shiva, there's Durga, there's like Green Tara, there's Yeshua, there's Mary Magdalene. And I love what I've learned from you about Kabbalah. I don't know as much about that. And as you mentioned, some of the things that I'm sharing resonate with those teachings as well. So ultimately, at my core of my being, I believe that I'm a mystic. I identify as a mystic. And to me, who is a mystic? A mystic is someone who has a direct connection to God, has a direct relationship to God. And you can get that through multiple lineages. If I actually trace my lineage back, it would go more to Norse mythology, which I've just started to get into some of the teachings of and start to work with those gods and goddesses and some of that magic as well. I pull from it all, though. And I think that that's what we're here to do ultimately, especially in this lifetime, is there's this beautiful opportunity with the internet to create this global community where we can learn from each other. And it comes from this energy of deep respect and reverence for the variety of these teachings that I mentioned. And then from that, like, of course, for me, so much of this is going to resonate. So I'm saying God, goddess, because it feels like there's this divine father, divine mother. I have connected more with the divine mother energy, actually, personally. And there's a lot of people who resonate with those teachings more as God as mother or as feminine that birthed everything. Everything must come from the womb, the black womb of no thing. And I feel like God is everything. So I say God, goddess, to welcome multiple viewpoints and experiences of this divine energy, and also to add that personified touch, because I don't think it's only this like energy that doesn't have caring and empathy and creativity and these things that we also have.
Oh, I also think you're a mystic. I wrote down as you're speaking, multidisciplinary mystic.
Oh, thank you.
And drawing on many lineages. And like you said, there's this aspect of lineage healing and ancestral healing. And you speak about past lives, which is that's a fascinating topic in and of itself. The black womb of no thing. When you said that, I was like, wow, that just I feel like each sentence that you said has a whole deeper message that we could unpack. There's two different things that I'm curious to explore, and I'll let you choose what feels more alive for you to talk about right now. One is, just this topic of past lives and lineage healing, which are related but different. And the other is just, you really are a mystic. And what does the life of a mystic look like? Because of course we're all different, but I feel like your life does look different than the average person's. And I think it'd be really cool to share a little bit more what it looks like to be a mystic in 2023 and what that can look like in your case.
Yeah, I feel like thank God I'm a mystic in 2023. Thank God I've been a mystic over these last 4 years, because what we've
And
been moving
lifetimes.
through is really hard to navigate as a human being. I want to speak a little bit to, you mentioned the lineage healing, ancestral healing.
Yeah.
I feel that work is so important because, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we incarnate into these lineages that have certain repeating patterns in order to actually activate our greatness. So what this can actually look like is, look at your life, whoever's listening, look at your life and look at the challenges that you can't seem to figure out. Like, I used to joke with my friends that mine were men and money. Like, why can't I figure this out? Men and money. And when I started to, and there's deeper wounding and really serious traumas in that, I'm making light of it right now. So as I really set on this mission to heal myself and to heal in particular my sexuality, my sexual trauma, it didn't start making sense until I started asking questions about my ancestors, until I went to my mom and said, Mom, what happened to you? What happened to grandma? So I'd really encourage the listeners to, like I said, look at the areas of your life that you're struggling and you can't seem to fix, and then start tracing back along your lineage through your ancestors to look at how they did in those areas of life and what came up for them. And just that simple act of like asking your parents. My mom, I think it's a love-hate relationship actually with the questions that I bring to her. And she loves it because she loves that someone cares enough about our family history to learn it. Because most people are going through life right now on autopilot, scrolling their phones, distracted, not giving a fuck about what happened to their ancestors, not knowing anything about their family history, anything about their lineage. So I wanted to mention that and the importance of that work. And then as far as being a mystic, so I make the major life decisions in my life based on oracle cards. And I would highly recommend this because it's getting the personal limited ego consciousness out of the way. I'm a human being. Yes, I'm a divine being. And I'm operating in my life with the awareness that I have at this time, with the worldview that I have at this time. And what I do when I consult my Oracle deck, and Shifra has an amazing deck. I don't know if she's told you guys about it on here yet. She did a few readings for me and it's really powerful. When I consult my deck, I just make sure that I've attuned it to me, right? Like I hold it over my heart and I clear the deck by wiping my hand across it. And I just say, clearing any energy that's not attuned to me in this present moment. Then I hold it over my heart and I say, attuning to me in this present moment. And then I say, only benevolent energies that love me unconditionally, that are here to support my highest path, highest purpose, and highest timeline are allowed to interact with this reading.
Amen.
And then I ask the question, whatever it is like, maybe it's about men or it's about money. Those are likely the two questions. It's like, what about this guy that I'm talking to on online dating? And I pull the cards and it tells me, and I can tell you, I specifically mentioned these last few years because of all the collective turmoil. I'm so grateful that I'm a mystic because I have a direct connection to God. And there's been a lot of brainwashing, a lot of programming, a lot of manipulation of the masses right now. So I've been able to discern my way through that through my direct connection to God and to source. So just coming back to the reading, right? Like I can see over the last 3.5 years, I can connect the dots between all my card readings when I was going through hard times that I had to go through because they were initiation. The cards were telling me what was coming in the future. The cards were telling me what was here right now. Even when I was attaching to things in my life that on one hand may not have been the best for me, on another hand, the guides, God, source knows who I am as a person, knows that I'm going to be attaching, is giving me like clues until I'm ready on the human level to take that action. So the cards have been so helpful for me. And that's one of the main tools that I use as a mystic to navigate my reality. And I also operate based on signs, symbols, synchronicities. I guess that's the 3 S's of being a mystic.
That's so cool. Signs, symbols, and synchronicities.
So, like, if I see an animal in nature and it's like an absurd appearance, I'm looking up, okay, what does this animal represent? Or if, like, for example, I recently took a regular job. I'm also a coach, and I decided I needed to be around people more. I live at this cabin in the woods, and it's fairly isolated. For my nervous system, I need to have my vagus nerve stimulated by being around people in order to be healthy. I've learned that I can't isolate too much. So I took this job at a cannabis store because it's legal here in Canada. And one of the reasons I did is like, I stopped there. There's a sign on the door for bud tenders. It's a curiosity that I had before about working at a cannabis store. And then I look at the address on the little thing they hand me, and it's 111 Railway Avenue. So as a mystic, I'm like, okay, I have to apply for this job. So I don't think everyone makes their decisions that way. And I would say it works for me because really we look at this reality as a holographic reality. It's a fractal reality. And we have these benevolent energies that are communicating with us all the time. Like the universe is operating in our favor. It's just, are we listening? And a mystic is someone who really listens. Other people will say no. They're getting the same signs. They say no to them, though. And so they might not have their awareness attuned to them. So I make my life decisions based on those signs. And I'm continually calling in benevolent energies that support my highest timeline, like I mentioned.
A mystic is someone who really listens. I wanted to repeat that because it felt worthy of repeating. And yeah, it lands a lot for me. And the cards, oh man, every time you speak, it's so much that comes through. And I'm glad that you mentioned the cards, and it made me think we can talk after, but I actually had this thought like, wow, I wish you could give me a reading with my deck, but you don't know my deck. But maybe we'll trade readings soon or something. That would be fun. We can talk after, but I'm holding my deck now. When you mentioned it, I picked it up. And so I will share briefly with folks about this because I also created my own deck based on Kabbalah. And it really just poured through me and came through me in the summer of 2021. And I've been using this deck to give readings to people. And it's not, I don't know. Different people have different relationships to readings, where some use it very psychically and like, oh, this is going to happen to you. And some, the way I use it is more like receiving guidance and the cards helping me to pull out from what's already within me, or helping me to pull out the wisdom from what's already in, someone that I'm giving a reading to. And, but I'm very excited because I've had this for a while, and then I wrote the book to it, and then I created a workbook for it. And then I finally, I don't know if I told you this yet, that I'm going to publish it this summer. And so I'm really excited that it'll be available this summer. And if anyone that's listening is interested in finding out, when it's published, so that you can get a copy, or even in getting a reading from me, all of that's on my website, which is shifrabloom.com. So it's a good opportunity for me to share that with people. Do you have a favorite deck, by the way?
Yeah, I think my favorite deck is the Archetypes deck by Kim. I think it's Kim Cross or something like that.
Is
Kim
it Kim Cram?
Kranz. Yeah, she has
Yeah.
an Archetypes deck, and they're round cards, and they're like, there's places, people, initiations. I think there's like 4 different things. So you can pull like a forest card or a maiden card or a apocalypse card. Like, and they've been so powerful for me. That deck in particular was the one that I used on the airplane flying down to the United States when I moved, just before everything started happening the last few years. And that deck really got me through the initiations that I've moved through in the last few years. And then it ended up bringing me back to Canada, which was a surprise. I thought I'd be still living in the United States, living in Colorado instead. And what's budding in my life here is a lot bigger than what I would have been able to create in the United States, I feel. So that deck has a lot of energy behind it for me.
Archetypes are really fun to work with. My deck is more the 4 worlds of Kabbalah and the specific energy centers of Kabbalah, and it goes like really deep down that rabbit hole. And sometimes the archetypes are easier to relate with in some ways. It's just different.
Yeah, I think that's like, those are still archetypes. I don't know Kabbalah as well. It's like archetypes are basically anything that when you say the word, it has like a whole internet database of energy, that there's this mutual understanding between it. So like if I say mother, you have an inherent understanding of what mother is, and I have an inherent understanding of what mother is. It's like one of the prime energy units of the universe, basically. So your Kabbalah deck would still be archetypes. It's archetypes based on Kabbalah, and her archetypes deck, she has an intro to it that explains like why certain archetypes are in and why certain archetypes are left out. And
that's cool.
It's really interesting stuff.
That's so fun. I also, as a fellow mystic, I think it's not necessarily a requirement to being a mystic, but it's interesting that you're off over there living in your cabin in the woods by yourself. And I have spent a significant amount of time living alone in a cabin in the woods by myself. And I think there's just something to being able to be alone with oneself and be in a space where the noise can get cut out, where like you said, a mystic is someone who can really listen. And there's something about being in an environment where there's less noise that is supportive to being able to develop that capacity of listening. And then, at least in my experience, it's like I go and I develop the capacity, and then I, go back into the world again, and then it gets noisy, and I savor those moments of stillness again, and then I, charge up and go back in. And I think that's common among modern mystics.
Yeah, I think Ram Dass said something like the real work is in the city. So I feel I definitely had to go to Austin in particular. It was way harder on my nervous system. And Shifra, you might understand, although most people, I would try to explain to them like how hard living in the city was on my nervous system. And for someone like me, I'm highly sensitive in the first place. And then you add on all these electromagnetic frequencies and the collective thought form of all of these negatives that people are having, and like the stress and all of that has an effect on the body. Now, the thing is that forced me to learn how to regulate my nervous system in the midst of that, and also the chaos and personal relationship dynamics that I was experiencing. And so it was like this heavy weightlifting routine for my nervous system. And then when I came back here to this cabin in the woods, and I said that you would understand this, Shifra, is like how quiet it is in the morning or at night versus like in Austin. I was yearning for quiet. The best access I had to it was when there was a lot of water running through Barton Creek, and I would go down. I had an apartment really close to there, and I'd go down, and I called it my goddess bath, where there were like these little waterfalls over the rocks, and it would pool into this one area, and I'd do my morning routine there. And it was like this little oasis in the middle of the city where I could focus on the sound of the water versus all of the city sounds, and I could get that respite that I needed for my nervous system. So I have that all the time here in a much bigger way. There's none of that city noise. There's none of those vibrations. And yeah, as a mystic, that direct connection to God also comes through nature. God is nature. And so also there's this, like, as far grounded as we can be is as up high as we can reach into like these more higher realms of consciousness and connect with these higher planes of being, angels, archangels, ascended masters, whatever you want to call it. If you're grounded and connected to the earth, you can connect with those energies and actually bring that wisdom out onto this everyday third dimensional human experience. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about being in nature as a mystic.
Yeah. And you really have the lived experience of both, being in nature and then being in the city, and then finding ways to plug in and connect and regulate your nervous system in all kinds of different settings. And so I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about how you support others in doing that as well.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So I'm not sure when this show is going to come out. If it comes out on or around May 8th, I have a group program starting. It's called the Wild Tribe Group Transformation. And I did want to mention my podcast, the Wylde Podcast. Wild is spelled Wylde. So there's 30 episodes already ready to go on Spotify. So you can go check that out. And I am looking forward to having Shifra on soon. She was mentioning how she's like lived by herself in this cabin in the woods kind of vibe too. And what I really want to speak about next is rewilding. And that's one of my favorite things about Shifra is how wild she is. So I want to share some of that wild wisdom with the world.
They don't know yet. They don't know.
That'll be coming down the pipeline. Yeah, Shifra is so multifaceted too. Like when she came out with this podcast, it could have been about anything. And I love that it's about God. Like I feel so delighted that I get to speak with one of my best friends for 45 minutes about God, and it gets to be shared with the world. This is amazing. She could have done like rewilding. She could have done so many different things. So yeah, this group program is really about helping people achieve their goals, whatever those are for them. And because I do have such a solid self-care practice, I have a background in fitness and nutrition, my clients tend to see a lot of physical benefits when they work with me, even if we don't even talk about it. Like their health improves, they lose weight, things like that. So of course I can't promise weight loss as a result of this program. But yeah, it's going to be a more hot seat style coaching. So people are going to come with whatever questions they have, and also have this ability to like really feel the energy of what's going on behind the question. So I have this like no bullshit way of like getting to the truth of the matter and the heart of what's really going on for someone. So yeah, I really coach through intuition. And then I also recently added in a tool to my coaching called the Condor approach, which I learned from my mentors, Todd and Cole Whitty. And it is a psychedelic integration program, although it doesn't only apply to psychedelics. They have a journal that has really allowed me to grow a lot simply by tracking numerically where I'm at in my life. Like, for example, there's this thing called the morning ease score, where you rate your work stress, your financial stress, your family stress, your relationship stress, and there's an area to put in other stress, whatever. For me, it used to be roommates, or now it's my car, right? Like, how stressed am I about these things? And you rate it on a scale of like 5 is you have ecstatic ease in the area, and 0 is like you're overwhelmed about it. And it's somewhere in between there. And then you get in the morning what's called your morning ease score. So this is based on something Ta and Cole came up with called the health continuum, which means we're always either in a state of dis-ease or ease. And if we're in a state of dis-ease, that literally manifests as disease if we stay there. And Shifra has some really amazing teachings on this too. Not sure if she shared about those on this show yet. But yeah, so just that alone of rating those areas of my life in the morning and seeing if I'm in a state of ease or dis-ease, again, it's unbiased. So it gets my ego out of the way, or the part of me that wants to deny and cling on to things that aren't actually serving me. Just by rating them, the universe and my consciousness are co-creating change in my life. So that's one of the tools that I'll be sharing in the program. So it's going to be like this combination of we'll be doing group coaching calls. And so that's like hot seat style coaching. Everyone will get a copy of that journal mailed to them with a handwritten note from me. And so it's like this balance of this feminine intuitive guidance with this masculine structured approach. And I'll likely be implementing that journal with all of my one-on-one clients too. And I'll be offering a 6-month business mentorship here pretty soon. So if you missed that program and you're interested in it, just reach out and I might have something else for you.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I do all kinds of different things, but those are the 2 main ones that are coming up.
Cool. And where do they find them?
Yeah, well, you can follow me on Instagram, Becoming Padmavati. Padmavati is Padma. I don't spell my name very much. Shifra, spell my name for me.
Padmavati.
Thank you. Becoming Padmavati on Instagram. And my group program is at wildtribe.com. And wild is WYLDE, wildtribe.com, if you want to check that out.
Cool. I really like listening to you speak. And I think this happens sometimes when I'm doing these episodes where I get so engaged in just listening and end up talking less about myself, which is fine. But it's just fun where you know me so well that you keep referencing things about me. And it's fun because I haven't talked about too much about me yet. And, I think I get so enthralled with listening and with these deeper conversations, but I will take a moment to, well, first of all, to just let people know that if it's for some reason it's after May 8th or they're listening to this later, that you always like, I've known you for a while now and you always have something that you're offering. So if it's not that specific thing, then I'm sure there'll be something else that's at least as good or better. So, I encourage people to reach out. And then I'll take just a second to share, because you brought up my readings, just to share the premise of what those are, because at least right now on shifrabloom.com, people can book readings. I don't always have it up that people can book readings, but I do have it up for people to book readings right now. And essentially the premise is that that we're souls on a journey in this life, and that life is, each experience, whether it's a challenge or something that we're calling in, each experience that life offers us, life gives us these opportunities for the purpose of expanding a certain attribute within ourself so that we can get to the next level, almost like a video game. And so if I'm at level 3 and I'm being challenged by a life experience, then I can go to, the card deck that I created, and through this ancient teachings of Kabbalah, I can gain wisdom as to what is my soul needing from me right now in order to get to the next level. And that's what I unlock for people in the readings. And Padmavati has experienced it before. And then from there, if you book a longer reading, then we can unpack some of the story behind it as well. And it's really powerful and it's really cool. So I want to invite people to that too. So yeah,
Kiefer, do you want to share just a little bit about, I referenced your teachings on disease, how that manifests in the body before we
oh, right.
close?
So thank you. So I mean, it goes both ways. So if someone's having a challenge in life, or if someone's having something that they're calling in, what the card deck shows us too, and what Kabbalah teaches us, is that things come in through the four worlds, which is basically four simple stages. There's four stages of creation, and the whole universe is created through the four worlds, and we incarnate through the four worlds, and our projects and our books and our podcasts come in through the four worlds, which means the disease also comes in through the four worlds. And so if disease comes in through these four steps, four stages, four worlds, and I have to admit, I have a very pithy, easy way of understanding the four worlds that makes them very, very practical and applicable. And if disease comes in through the four worlds, then it can also heal backwards through the four worlds in the same way. And so, yeah, the cards, I mean, there's more I could say on it, obviously, but the cards are really helpful for that as well, because if we can identify the exact stage and then the exact energy center within the stage, this is so cool, because now we know where to focus on. And what's even cooler is that each of the, I get really excited about it. Each of the energy centers corresponds not only to like a card and to teachings and to introspective questions and to personal work you can do around it, but literally to part of the physical body. And so if you know this emotional aspect is connected to this physical aspect, now we can also do literal physical healing, and we can get clear on which kinds of healing modalities are going to be most effective for the ailment. So we can go really, really deep with it. It's basically.
Yeah. Can you just touch on the four worlds, each one?
Okay, now you're interviewing me.
I like to also help the host shine as a podcast host. I really feel it's a conversation both ways. So I'd love
Oh,
to
this
just
is
have you touch on that a little bit.
Thank you. This is great, because I could talk about this all day, and it's true. I'm always talking about other people on this show, so this is fun and special. And the four worlds are it's the four stages to creation. And so the simplest way, the words are in the words are in Hebrew, and they essentially mean the world of emanation, the world of creation, the world of formation, and the world of action. But I distill it down to make it much more practical than that. So essentially, think of it this way: belief, thought, speech, emotion, and action. And so what's going on in our beliefs then becomes more dense and becomes our thoughts. And then our thoughts become the emotions we're feeling and also the words that we speak. And thoughts have to go through speech in order to become real. So if you can't articulate something very, very, very clearly and speak it out loud, it's not quite ready to come into form. And then it's the world of action. And similarly, if we're in the world of action with something, for example, if there is a disease manifest, then we have to go backwards up that same ladder and look at, what are the emotions that are being felt around this? How do we put that into words? And then how do we unravel the, negative thoughts or negative limiting beliefs that are contributing to this manifested, circumstance, and then go all the way back up to the seed stories and to the beliefs, which could be from someone's own life or could be ancestral. And the really cool thing is that this can happen rapidly. Like this shift in belief can happen so rapidly because we're not just talking about it, we're implementing a few key features that get very specific, including specific breath work, specific frequency work, and then, going really deep into the, each of the four levels has kind of like 10 different sub levels to it. So I can get very, very specific. And yeah, that's just a brief intro. But the cool thing is that even in a 15-minute reading, like as you know, someone can get an immense amount of clarity from a 15-minute reading. And in a 60-minute reading, we can completely unwind the charge. I'll say it this way, because it's like you said, I can't promise weight loss in this, in this session. But what I can say is that over and over again, I have experienced with people in the past completely unwinding the charge from the most traumatic event of their life in 60 minutes or less, because we go straight to the point. And then, we use breath and source energy to discharge it. And that creates so much opportunity and spaciousness to move forward and become co-creators with the divine in our own life. So
Beautiful.
I think that's a good intro. What do you think?
Yeah. I really wanted you to mention, like, I love how you shared I don't know, I'm going to say like actual names, emanation, action. There was 4 of them, and then your own way you simplify it. That's really powerful. It's really powerful the way that you've simplified it, and I love that.
And that's why I'm excited too for my book, because a lot of this Kabbalistic wisdom is more obscure, especially magical Kabbalah, which is the kind of Kabbalah that I focus on. It is more obscure and harder to learn about and harder to find, or it's very complex, or it's not in English and it's complicated, or it's tied to religions that someone might not, specifically Judaism, which someone might not be Jewish, and then they feel it's not for them. And so what's interesting is that in the beginning, when you were telling, you spoke about a lot of different disciplines and traditions, some of which are different than the Kabbalah, but a lot of what you said also really landed, like, oh, there's Kabbalistic concepts for that too. And yet you mentioned that of all the different lineages and traditions that you named that you're familiar with and studied in and practiced in, Kabbalah was one that you knew less about. And that's part of why I'm so excited to be coming out with this book, is because it will be such a beautiful introduction, and it goes really deep. I mean, I was talking to someone who has been studying Kabbalah from a specific mystery school that I won't mention, the name or anything like that, but he's been studying Kabbalah for months now. And in a 60-minute, session together, he learned more about some of the specific energy centers, and specifically how it relates to his life in a practical way, like more in an hour than in the 4 months of study. And that's why I'm so excited for this book to come out, because I've made it so practical. Like, is as esoteric and mystical as I am, I like things that have results in the world of action, and so yeah, that's why I'm excited about the book. And people can, if you want to get news about the book, you can either follow me on Instagram at She for Bloom, or they can join my newsletter, and then get little love notes about mystical things approximately once a week, and get notified when the book comes out. And I could talk about it for an hour, but I think that's good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for your book.
Thank you. Thank you for asking and giving me a chance. I'm sure listeners are glad to know who this hostess is that's talking. And yeah, I'm excited for all the things we're creating, and for your program, and for the people who are going to get to be in it. And thank you for this conversation. And do we have any last words of wisdom that you want to share to our mystical listeners?
Yeah, just sending them so much love for this luscious love story that you get to experience with the divine. And I hope you can integrate from listening to this in nature. If you're not already there, go for a nice walk. This may be one that you want to listen to a couple times through, take some notes, and apply to your life, whatever would most support you.
Yeah, this probably is a good one to listen to, because every time that you spoke, there were so many layers, and I could only draw on a couple of topics. And I definitely could listen to this a few times myself. So thank you so much for coming on. It was really fun chatting with you here. And for all of you listeners, thank you guys for listening. I definitely appreciate if you will like this show, save it, subscribe if you want to hear more. And feel free to reach out to myself or Padmavati with any kind of follow-up if you enjoyed the show. And until next time.